All right, so we're going to talk about the midpoint. And so again, remember that's the midpoint between 2 points. It's halfway between the 2 points, and the answer is a coordinate. And then we have the formula that's on the outside of the foldable. Add the x's, divide by 2, comma, add the y's, divide by 2. All right, so let's look at example 1. We want to find the midpoint between 7, -5, and 9, -1. So your first step says to identify the x1 and y1 and x2 and y2. So then we just want to label our ordered pair. So in 7, -5, we can make that our x1 and y1. Go ahead and label that on your notes. X1 and y1. And then for 9, -1, we're going to name that x2 and y2. So remember that your ordered pairs always go in the order x, comma, y. Okay? So now in order to do this, we need to add the x values. So what are the x values here? 7 and 9. So we want to do 7 plus 9 divided by 2. Comma, now we're going to add the y values. So what are those? So we get -5 plus -1 divided by 2. And it should be in parentheses because it's an ordered pair. All right, so now we're going to add and then divide by 2. So 7 plus 9 is 16, and then divide that by 2 is 8. So the x-coordinate of the midpoint is 8. Then we're going to do the y. So we're going to add -5 plus -1, which is -6. And then we're going to divide by 2, get -3. So the ordered pair for the midpoint is 8, -3. And then you see it's in parentheses, has the comma in between it. That is how you give me the midpoint. We're okay with that? All right, so if we look at example 2, where we need to find the midpoint of this line segment, the only difference is they didn't explicitly give us the coordinates. So we have to look at the graph and be able to pull what the coordinates are. So if we look at this point here, what's the ordered pair? 2, 0. Okay, so let's label it on the picture. That ordered pair is 2, 0. And then the other ordered pair would be 5, 2. And so now once we have the ordered pair, we can do exactly what we did up in example 1. We're going to add the x values. So what are the x values? They're 5 and 2. So we get 5 plus 2 divided by 2. Then what are the y values we need to add together? 2 and 0. So 2 plus 0 divided by 2. All right, so what's 5 plus 2? 7. And then 7 divided by 2 is 3.5. Good. And then 2 plus 0, 2 divided by 2, 1. So the ordered pair for this midpoint is 3.5, 1. And we can actually check this on the graph to make sure it's actually in the middle. So we're going to go over to 3.5. So over 1, 2, 3.5 is in the middle, up 1. So it's right here. And isn't that point in the middle between, of that line? In the middle between there, right? So if you ever want to check your work, graph what you have, what you were given, and then graph the midpoint and see if it's way off, not in the center, then you've done something wrong with your math. If it is in the center, then you're good to go. Okay, that's how you can check your work. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is how to find the endpoint using the, what we're going to call the EMO method. So Just made this up, so just go with me. So the emo method, from here, I'm going to give you one endpoint, I'm going to give you the midpoint, and then you need to find the other endpoint, okay? So the emo method goes like this. Stack the ordered pairs of the endpoint and the midpoint. You see where the E and the M come from in emo? Endpoint, midpoint. So stack them, meaning write them on top of each other. Then we're going to find the change between the x values and then use that same change to find the other endpoint. And then we're going to repeat for the y's. So let me show you what this looks like. What is the ordered pair for the endpoint? In example 3, what's the ordered pair for the endpoint? 3, 7. So I just wrote it down. 3, 7. Now what's the ordered pair for the midpoint? 5, 10. Okay. So now this is what I mean. What did I have to do to get from 3 to 5? We had to add 2. So we had to add 2 there. So guess what? To get from the midpoint to the other endpoint, that's what the OE stands for, we got to add 2 again. So if we're now at 5 and have to add 2, where are we? 7. Good. All right, so let's go to the other side. If we're at 7 and we go to 10, what do? We added 3. So we have to do the exact same thing to get to the other endpoint. So we're going to add 3 to 10, and what do we get? 13. So this tells me the order pair for the other endpoint is 7, 13. And the other endpoint in this case is B. So the ordered pair for B is 7, 13. All right, the second way to go through and find the steps to find the endpoint, we're just going to use the algebra method using the actual midpoint formula. So because that midpoint formula up here is the x's divided by 2, the y's divided by 2, and all the x's together will give you the x of the midpoint, and the y's will give you the y of the midpoint. We're just going to separate the formula into 2. So we got the x of the midpoint is equal to x1 plus x2 divided by 2. And then the y value of the midpoint is equal to y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So that's what I mean when I say we're going to split the formula in 2. And then we're going to plug in what we know. So we will know the value of the midpoint, x and y, and we'll know one of the endpoints, so the x1 and y1 that we can plug in, and then we'll solve for x2. Okay? So in example 4, where M is the midpoint of AB, find the coordinates of B if the coordinate of A is -5, 2, and M is 1, 8. So the 1 is the x value of the midpoint, so we'll start there. So 1 is equal to the x value of the endpoint is -5. So we'll do -5 plus x sub 2 divided by 2. And now we just need to solve for that x of 2. So we're going to multiply both sides by 2. 2's here cancel, so 2 times 1 is 2 is equal to -5 plus x of 2. And then we're going to add 5 to both sides. And so 7 is equal to x of 2. So we know the x coordinate of B is 7. And now we're going to come and do the same thing for the y values. So I'm going to kind of split this up. So the y value, the midpoint y value is 8. So we get 8 equals, the y value of A is 2. So we get 2 plus x squared divided by 2. And then we're going to multiply both sides by 2. Because we want to clear out the 2 in the denominator. So this is 16 is equal to 2 plus x of 2. And then we're going to subtract 2 from both sides. And then we get 14 equals x of 2. So now, sorry, this should be y. Sorry. And now we know the x value is 7, the y value is 14. So the ordered pair for B would be 7, 14. Okay? And so those are how you find the endpoint if you're given it one endpoint in the midpoint. And then above is how you actually find the midpoint.